The numbers keep on going up. The latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. Podcasting's daily reach continues to rise. Edison Research has posted a 20% year-on-year increase in their latest share of ear survey. Now, 18% of people in the US, age 13 or over, listen every day. The graph shows that more people are listening to podcasts, the company says, which means content creators have the opportunity to grow time spent listening with those people. Following our piece about the IAB now requiring annual recertification for podcast measurement, the IAB's PR company has clarified that pricing has changed, quote, to make certification more accessible to the wide podcast measurement community. Rather than being $45,000 for certification for an IAB member, new certification costs $12,500, with renewals costing $6,250. We've updated the original piece. Podcast Page has released a major update to its website builder for podcasters. The service now has a drag-and-drop page builder and 9 new website templates. You can also import your YouTube channels and playlists, and the system is now multi-user to allow others to control your pages. Dear Media is to release its first true crime podcast series. The show will investigate Coco Berthman, a human rights advocate who was arrested for apparently faking a cancer diagnosis and charged with fraud. An audiobook and ebook subscription service in Sweden, Storytel, has raised $37 million. 2 new radio and podcast apps have been launched in South Africa from Vuma FM and Rise FM. From the music world, indie music had a total market share in the UK of 28.6% of all revenue, says the BPI, the company's music industry collective, and we wonder where indie podcasters fit into the overall podcast market. The Earbuds Podcast Collective this week looks at podcast episode recommendations about climate change. Are you in Brisbane in Australia? If so, me too. You should be coming to the Brisbane Podcasters Meetup. It's on Friday, November the 25th, and it's free at The Plough in Southbank. We'll link to more details today. There may be Podnews podcasters up for grabs if we remember to bring them. And the Rover radio and podcast app in New Zealand has kicked off a new marketing campaign today, inviting all podheads to get into its seriously addictive podcasts. We'll link to one of the TV ads today in our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. It's a Monday, so time for some tech stuff. A new user agent lookup list has been produced by John Spurlock. It's based on both Oporg and Buzzsprout's implementations, including web referrers, and is a specific and highly detailed user agent device and OS detection list for great podcast analytics. We'll link to the current repo and the discussion in our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. If you're running a podcast hosting company, would that data help enhance your stats or simplify maintenance? We'd love you to take a look. Casterpod has shared a presentation from Benjamin Bellamy and Yassine Dogri on web monetization, which is an alternative to cryptocurrency for micropayments. The first Value for Value podcast in Zimbabwe has launched in conversation with Trevor, hosted by South African podcast company Iono, now accepts streaming sats and boostergram messages, as do we. And HiveTube, a federated and decentralized streaming media service built on PeerTube, now supports Podping. And thank you for your boosts, Adam Curry, 10,000 sats, because he liked our use of the word lekker last Friday. Lekker. Chemistry Made Simple sent us 567 sats, thanking us about the news about Captivate's download limit changes. And thank you to Dave Jones, who suggested the IAB's move to annual recertification is tone deaf. If you get value from Podnews, you can support us with a boost from your new podcast app at podnews.net/new podcast apps. And in podcast news, the hugely successful My Dad Wrote a Porno podcast is to end in December. After 7 years, there are just 3 episodes left. It's hosted on Acast. And a popular newsletter has launched as a podcast today. There's an idea. It's called The Seven from the Washington Post, hosted by Jeffrey Pierre. It gives listeners an essential digest of the stories they need to know to start their day in under 7 minutes. The flagship newsletter has more than 1 million subscribers. It'll be available every day by 7 a.m. And that's the latest from our daily newsletter. For all the links and to subscribe, we're at podnews.net.